Last night in Sweden, Trump's remark baffles a nation. London, Swedes reacted with confusion, anger and ridicule on Sunday to a vague remark by President Trump that suggested that something terrible had occurred in their country. During a campaign-style rally on Saturday in Florida, Mr. Trump issued a sharp if discursive attack on refugee policies in Europe, ticking off a list of places that have been hit by terrorists. "You look at what's happening," he told his supporters. "We've got to keep our country safe. You look at what's happening in Germany, you look at what's happening last night in Sweden." Sweden, who would believe this? Not the Swedes. Nothing particularly nefarious happened in Sweden on Friday, or Saturday, for that matter, and Swedes were left baffled. Continue reading the main story-related coverage. Trump returns to campaign trail after a month in office. February 18, 2017. Fact check: what Trump got wrong at his rally February 18, 2017. Sweden, terror attack? What has he been smoking? Questions abound. Carl Bildt, a former prime minister and foreign minister, wrote on Twitter. Mr. Trump did not state, per se, that a terrorist attack had taken place in Sweden. But the context of his remarks, he mentioned Sweden right after he chastised Germany, a destination for refugees and asylum seekers fleeing war and deprivation, clearly suggested that he thought something awful had happened. Sweden, he said. They took in large numbers. They're having problems like they never thought possible. You look at what's happening in Brussels. You look at what's happening all over the world. Take a look at Nice. Take a look at Paris. We've allowed thousands and thousands of people into our country and there was no way to vet those people. There was no documentation. There was no nothing. So we're going to keep our country safe. Contrary to Mr. Trump's allegations, nearly all of the men involved in terrorist assaults in Paris on November 13, 2015, in Brussels on March 22 last year, and in Nice, France, on July 14, were citizens of France or Belgium. As the Swedish newspaper Aftonbladet noted, Twitter users were quick to ridicule Mr. Trump's remark, with joking references to the Swedish Chef, the Muppets character, Swedish meatballs, and IKEA, the furniture giant. Others speculated that Mr. Trump might have been influenced by a Fox News interview of Amy Horowitz, a filmmaker who asserts that migrants in Sweden have been associated with an increase in crime, by the correspondent Tucker Carlson. They oftentimes try to cover up some of these crimes, Mr. Horowitz said, arguing that those who try to tell the truth about the situation are shouted down as racists and xenophobes. Mr. Carlson interjected, "The masochism of the West knows no bounds at all." Mr. Horowitz said, "Sweden had its first terrorist Islamic attack not that long ago, so they're now getting a taste of what we've been seeing across Europe already." It was not clear what he was referring to. In 2010, a suicide bomber struck central Stockholm, injuring 2 people. The bomber, Tmur Abdul Wahab al-Abdali, 28, was an Iraqi-born Swede who had developed an affinity for al-Qaeda. But that attack occurred long before the current wave of migrants fleeing war and deprivation. Sweden has a long history of welcoming refugees, Jews, Iranians, Eritreans, Somalis, Kurds and people from the former Yugoslavia, among others. But even some of the most tolerant and idealistic Swedes have raised questions about whether the country can absorb so many newcomers so quickly. Henrik Sellén, political scientist and deputy director of the Swedish Institute, a state agency dedicated to promoting Sweden globally, said he was puzzled by Mr. Trump's remarks. "I do not have a clue what he was referring to," he said in a telephone interview. Obviously, this could be connected to the fact that there has been a lot of negative reporting about Sweden, since Sweden has taken in a lot of refugees. The country processed 81,000 asylum seekers in 2014, 163,000 in 2015 and 29,000 last year, with another 25,000 to 45,000 expected this year, according to the Swedish Migration Agency. Mr. Sellén completed a study recently focusing on negative news reports about Sweden's intake of refugees. It found numerous exaggerations and distortions, including reports falsely claiming that Sharia law was predominant in parts of the country and that some immigrant-heavy neighborhoods were considered no-go zones by the police. Those reports were highly exaggerated and not based in facts, Mr. Sellon said. Some of the stories were very popular to spread in social media by people who have the same kind of agenda, that countries should not receive so many refugees. As for the cover-up alleged by Mr. Horowitz, Mr. Sellon said, that kind of claim has been in the political debate for 15 years now. But nobody has been able to prove there is a cover-up. On the contrary, the fact is that crime rates are going down. He added, Swedish authorities have nothing to gain from hiding the truth. We are quite keen to ensure that the debate and the story about our country is fact-based and nuanced. We are more than happy to talk about the challenges our country faces as well as the things that are going well. In an essay in the newspaper Dagens Nyheter, the journalist Martin Gillen speculated that Trump might have gotten his news from the countless right-wing media in the United States that have long been reporting that Sweden is heading for total collapse. He added, among Trump supporters there are common myths that Sweden is in a state of chaos after taking in refugees from the Middle East. These are incorrect, made-up and gravely misleading news items like this have spread to right-wing sites like Breitbart, Human Events, Drudge Report, and Fox News, as well as the popular conservative radio programs that reach millions of listeners every day.